Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for tonight's call. It's kind of like a webinar, but as you can see, it's a Zoom where you guys can also talk. So later, we're going to have some time for that. After our speaker is finished with the presentation, I'm sure you'll have questions and you'll have a chance to actually say those out loud, which is awesome. We're also planning to do a little bit of answering your questions along the way. So the chat will certainly be used. We will be monitoring the chat, and you're welcome to put questions in there as they arise and you want our speaker to address. But I want to introduce myself first. My name is Hillary Graves. I am the managing partner of Bright Sound Investments, a private equity firm out of York, Pennsylvania. And we do multifamily syndications where we bring in passive investors. And that's also kind of how I know our co-host, Ian. So Ian, do you want to introduce yourself?
I will. Thanks, Hillary. Ian Schmidt, Charleston, South Carolina. And I'm the founder of Mapleton Capital Group. We have commercial assets in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Lots of multifamily now, and industrial flex. So thanks, Hillary, and thank you, Kevin. Lots of questions for you. I know from a lot of people on this call, so we really appreciate you coming tonight.
Sure, appreciate it.
Yes, our speaker tonight is Kevin Felmlee, and he lives close to me. Actually, I met him at our local meetup here in York, Pennsylvania. And when I met him, he was speaking. I first saw him, he was speaking on the topic very similar to tonight's topic. And it was so captivating. I mean, everyone was taking vigorous notes and then asking 50 questions. And as I recall, Kevin, we had to wait. We were there for hours. Like I was like ready to go to bed. I'm like, okay, people, we could just talk forever on this topic because there's so many rabbit holes to go down. But this topic of IRAs and 401ks and how you can actually invest with your retirement account is fascinating and an amazing thing. So, Kevin, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and give us a little bit about your background. And then I know you have a presentation. So, right, go for it.
Okay, sounds good. This is what I entitled my presentation, Different Strategies for Growing Tax-Free Wealth. And my name and contact information is there. My legal disclaimer, I am not an attorney, accountant, or tax professional, so I encourage you to seek competent advice for that. My presentation here tonight is strictly educational purposes only, and with that. So here's the agenda, just so we don't run down any rabbit holes. I want to sort of stick to this. First, I feel it's my duty to show why we need a portfolio of tax-free entities. And that's what I'm going to talk about mainly, is how to do different investments and not pay any taxes on it. Let it grow tax-free. And through that, we'll do a high-level overview of self-directed IRAs, talk about what is a self-directed IRA, what makes it a self-directed, the different types, which there's a lot of them. And then I'll give you my personal opinion, the best ones that I like to use in order. And then we'll have a Q&A as well. So this is my background. I've been a landlord since 2002. I love real estate. I think it's a tried and true wealth developer. Back in 2002, it was definitely a different life, different time than it is now. I didn't have bigger pockets. I didn't have podcasts, educational conferences, things like that. So it was definitely different. And I've always self-managed all my properties. And I enjoyed that part of it. I've done rehabs. I've done tenant screening, all of it, the bookkeeping and so forth. So I'm very hands-on with that. And I still have a pretty decent portfolio today, but I did scale down in the last 5 years. I sold some properties. And then in 2020, I pretty much became completely passive through my income. I don't do any type of active income anymore, flipping or anything like that. I don't have a business or a job anymore. So everything's completely passive for me. We basically live off my wife's salary as a nurse. to pay our expenses. So everything that comes through cash flow from my rentals, my investments and so forth, I just put that right back in and there's another investment and just try to compound it and go from there. So in 2018, I got on the kick to do private lending. I had some friends that were doing it and they said, Ken, this would be a great opportunity for you, And I tried it and I loved it. And I still love it today. It's a huge passion of mine. I actually have not bought a property since 2019. And it would be very, very hard for me to buy another rental property after being a private lender. The cash flow is almost about the same, less liability. Well, actually, there's not even close to the same liability, hands-on involvement and so forth. So I'll talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes. I do a lot of syndications. I'm currently in about 12 of those. I'm in a lot of note funds. I started doing that 2017, where you basically just put a lump of cash in a fund, and then that manager uses that to buy assets or, non-performing notes and, whatever. There's a lot of different types of funds out there right now. So then in 22, I started dabbling in car washes. I have 2 down in North Carolina that I'm a passive investor on. Then 21, I got into ATMs and self-storage. They are strictly cash flow, just cash coming in every month or every quarter on that. And I also practice infinite banking, if you're familiar with that, using a whole life policy to create like a family bank. And that's basically how I run everything through my family bank and then back out to another investment. And then in December of 22, I did a 1031 exchange into gas and oil mineral rights. And I actually did a 1031 exchange with it because that's eligible because you get a warranty deed with the gas and oil mineral rights. And once I sort of figured that out and saw the opportunity there, I was like, definitely I'm going to explore this asset class. So here's my personal disclaimer. I just basically call myself a practitioner. I do this every day with the self-directed IRAs and teach other people. And I put my different entities in different deals and so forth. But I have nothing to sell you. I have no coaching programs, no package deals or anything like that. So you can rest assured I have nothing to sell you at all. And then a couple assumptions that I'm going to base this presentation on is if most of you are interested in syndications, you invest in syndications or note funds, things like that, probably most of you are accredited investors. So I'm going to assume that some of you may not be an accredited investor, but I'm going to assume the majority of you are. And that allows you to get into investment for alternative assets. Second assumption is I'm assuming that most of you are interested in investing in alternative assets. Just a disclaimer, I'm not a big fan of the stock market. I don't buy stocks, bonds and mutual funds. If that is strictly your thing, then this might be a little boring for you, but I like alternative assets. I think you have a little bit more control and the gains are a lot better as well. So these are the different self-directed IRA accounts that I manage. And I'm putting this up there just so you can sort of see what's involved and what's the possibility to do if you really wanted to put a lot of time and energy into these. So I have 4 different Roth accounts, family members. I have 1 health savings account, and we'll go in a little bit more detail on these in a minute, what they are. 2 Coverdell accounts, which are educational savings accounts. I have one inherited Roth, which unfortunately we won't have time to talk about tonight, but that might be an option for another presentation down the road. The inherited Roth is an awesome tool if you understand the value of it. And then I have one solo 401k that I use that also has a traditional and a Roth bucket or an IRA component of the solo 401k. So for my lending partners, I have about 7 lending partners that use strictly cash. And when I say cash, that means non-entity money or non-IRA money. And then I have 6 that are using strictly just using their self-directed IRAs for private money lending. So this is my focus with my personal self-directed IRAs. Number one, my bread and butter, I do it every day, is private money lending. And my goal is to put that IRA in a deal where I'm getting 9 to 12% returns easily, sometimes even more than that. Once I got into private lending, I understood how safe it was and low risk. And the reason being is all my lending that I do to another real estate investor is secured by an asset. So I get a deed and a note and a mortgage on each investment or each asset. So if that property would go down in value, or if some reason it would go upside down with the investor and I had to foreclose, I would get a property back that is worth much, much more than what I put into it. And that's one reason why I like it. It's safe. So all my private money lending initiatives are short term. I don't do 2-3 years. Mine actually is like 6-9 months, sometimes 12 months. And I love that because I can come in and if I have any idle cash that are between deals, like larger deals, I can put them in private lending deals where I'm still getting a good return. So it's just not sitting in a non-interest bearing account earning nothing. I can put it in a deal and I know I'll be getting that back in, sometimes 4 months. Probably the shortest one I've ever done was like 3 months. And I like them just as much as the 9 months, to be honest with you, because my yield goes up so much higher when they turn them quicker. So the private money lending really fits in nicely with me being a landlord, since I've done a lot of rehabs. I know construction. I can look at properties and see what it's going to need and see if the rehab budget's in line with what I think it would be and so forth. So that has been a really helpful background to be a private money lender. So my second focus is helping others obtain passive income through lending. And how we do that is through fractionalized notes. And it's pretty simple. It's just a first mortgage, first position mortgage on a asset, and we just fractionalize it. So if Hillary would put in 30% and Ian would put in 40%, and I would put in the other 30%, that would be spilled out right in the note and the mortgage. And that's what makes it a fractionalized note. And then my third focus is alternative investments and syndications. So when I grow these self-directed IRAs and I get them to a larger amount, because syndications, you have to have typically 50, 75, 100K to get into the deal. If you don't have that, then you need to grow it to get to that point, and you can put the IRA in that investment. Awesome. So here's a question for you. What's going to be your number one expense throughout your business and real estate career? Let's say you're a full-time real estate investor, you buy rental properties, you flip properties or whatever, or you have a business, or even if you're a W-2 wage earner, you have a W-2 job, what's going to be your number one expense? it's going to be taxes. So let me show you a little slide here that shows you the value of taxes and how compounding interest affects that. So if I'd ask you, we'd be sitting somewhere and I'd ask you, what would you rather have, $1 million or a magic penny? Let's look at the magic penny. This is a penny that doubles each day for 30 days. So obviously on day 1, it's a cent. Day 2, 2, 4, 8, 16, just keeps going up and doubling. And then you look down at the graph, and right around day 28, we're building up to 1.3 million. So now it's starting to get some traction. Day 27, it was 671. Day 28, 1.3 million. And then it just keeps going. By the end of day 30, it's up to 5.3 million and some change. So that shows the value or the power of compounding interest. And then here's a graph to show that. And that red line just shows that magic penny really gaining steam there at day 28 versus just $1 million that you could have had your choice on. So here's the kicker. Let's look at those same numbers and implement taxes. And this is just a generic 30%, could be less, could be more, depending on the situation, your taxes and so forth. But you get down to year 28 and what was it? 1.3 million. Here you're at day 28, you're at 16,000. Because you lost that compounding effect by the taxes taking out. And you know, people that do 1031 exchanges, this is the reason why, is because you don't have that taxation. But you can do the same effect with self-directed IRAs. So at the end of the month, you're left with 48,000. And when I saw this, probably about 6-7 years ago, I was amazed because I was like, really? Taxes are going to be that much factoring into this? And it's true. You can run this scale on multiple different projects, and if you see how you have to implement taxes into it. So when I saw this and I figured out there's a way around, the taxation, that's when I started really looking into using self-directed IRAs that have tax-free growth to them. So I always say taxes are the #1 wealth killer, just because of it doesn't allow you to have that compound effect and grow that income. All right. Anything else? Any in the chat box yet, Hillary, before we get into the self-directed IRAs?
Yes. This is a question from Robert. What are the annual W-2 income, maximum income to be able to open these various types of SDIRAs?
So what's your maximum income? Okay, so the Roth, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I think for a family, it's like 168,000, something like that. There's an income limit on a Roth. So if you are above that number for income, then you have to do what they call backdoor Roth. And that's basically, there's a lot of YouTube videos on it and so forth. Basically, you have to do it as a traditional IRA and then immediately convert it to a Roth. And that's how you get around that. But you are going to pay the tax on that when you convert it. But if you do it right away, the tax is pretty minimal. Okay, so what is a self-directed IRA? I've heard a lot of people over the years call it different things. They have different concepts about it and so forth. But the actual term is a marketing term, self-directed IRA. If you go to Section 408 of the IRS code, you'll never see the phrase self-directed IRA. It's just all IRAs. So that's how the custodians use it to market it. But it's basically, a tax advantage plan that puts you in control of choosing your own investments. So I come up with 3 different definitions here that I found from different custodians over the year. You guys can read these, but basically it's the same. When it's self-directed, it has to be with a custodian, versus if you have an IRA and it's with Fidelity or Schwab, that's not self-directed. So you have to pick assets that are offered by Fidelity or Schwab. When it's self-directed, and we'll see this in a couple slides here, you can have much more freedom and control over what you do invest in. And that's all the difference. But the rules and guidance and everything are exactly the same if it's an IRA with Fidelity or if it's an IRA with a custodian. Same rules apply. So, however, a self-directed IRA has 2 significant advantages that a typical IRA does not. And it's control over your retirement funds, and then freedom to choose those different alternative investments. And that's what I like about it. It's the freedom, what you can choose to put those funds into, versus just being stuck with, a lot of times if you have a 401k plan through an employer, you're just limited to what that brokerage offers to them. And usually about 10 different things you can pick from. So what kind of things can you invest in? The IRS is really clear on what you can't, and it's a very short list. So I think it's life insurance, collectibles like antiques, and something with alcohol or brewery or wine, something like that. It's alcohol related. So other than that, you can invest in anything. And that's why I like it. And you can if you're creative, you can do all kinds of things. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Probably the most popular is real estate. You can buy a property, let's say in your Roth IRA, and all the rent that comes in, all the appreciation that comes in on that property, when you go to sell it, is all tax-free. Now, with buying real estate, you increase your liability, or the IRA's liability, because that's who owns it. So you have to be careful of that, and you want to do that in an LLC just to create a little bit of a protection for that. Second thing is private equity or syndications, PPMs. So that's real popular to put your IRAs in. Private lending that I just talked about. And then also commodities. So you can invest in precious metals, crypto, cattle. I know someone owns several cattle that she's invested with a small farm. And I think she used her HSA to do that. And I just read something this week. There was someone that was investing one of their IRAs, I'm not sure which one it was, in a sports team. So very, very wide open on what you can invest in. So next is what I call the naughty list. This is your prohibited people that you can't do deals with indirectly or directly. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. I'll just sort of give the summation of it. But think of the family tree going up and down. So a spouse of account holder, I can't do certain deals with my spouse, my parents, kids, son-in-law. And then you get into a little bit more sophisticated things such as your corporation, partnerships, LLCs, trusts, and so forth, where you own 50% or more directly or indirectly. and then held by a fiduciary or a person providing services to the plan. So I could give you a lot of examples on this. Say I owned a home staging company, and I staged homes for investors to sell those flip properties. So I would know a lot of investors just from my business. I can't private lend to them. Okay, because, and I understand the reasoning. The IRS does not want that because they could see a little bit of quid pro quo, where I could maybe get a little creative and say, hey, your next staging is only going to be $100, but the next time I do a private lending deal with you, you're going to pay my Roth 20% interest instead of that normal 10%. So there's good reasons behind it, on why you would want to do that, and in the rules with it. Now, one note I'll make on this is, one thing you don't see on here that would be prohibited would be siblings. And I guess, I don't know, maybe Cain and Abel ruined this for, and they figured, hey, two brothers aren't going to go in cahoots with each other and so forth. So this opens up the door if you have a good relationship with a sibling. And I do with my brother. He's actually retired. He's 7 years older than me, and he's retired, but he has a big 401k plan. So I put him in private lending deals to work his 401k. Another example with siblings is my two daughters. They have IRAs, and I work their IRAs for them, while the one daughter is a trustee to the other to her sister. So she can act as a trustee, and that's not prohibited. So there's a lot of advantages of doing that with a sibling. So here's some prohibitive transactions, and there are tons and tons of information out there to dig deeper in the prohibited transactions. One good resource is actually going to custodians. They always have educational programs, but basically, in a nutshell, you can't personally benefit from your IRA, if that makes sense. So I always tell people, try to think of their IRA as a separate entity, which it is. Your IRA can actually get an EIN number, but you and your IRA are not the same. It has to be separated. So you can't personally benefit, such as if you own a rental property in your personal name or even in your LLC, you cannot sell it to an IRA. So once you own that, you cannot transfer it and sell it for $1 or something like that to your IRA. So you can basically put it into a tax-free entity. Fortunately, you cannot do that. Same thing, your IRA can't buy a beach house. You would say, well, I'll rent it out 10 days a year, and then in the summers, I'll get down and live in it for 3 months or something like that. You can't do it because you're personally benefiting from that investment that the IRA has. So if you do IRA investing, you have to think of it as you are directing your IRA to invest in something. It's not you personally. So your IRA is a separate entity from you. All right, Hillary, any more questions come in? I think I still have you on mute. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yes, this is from Rakesh. Hi, Rakesh. Question one, you can do SDIRA only with your previous employer for real estate investment and not with current employer 401k? That's question one.
Okay, yes, I know what he means. So if you are currently employed and you have a 401k, chances are you cannot make that self-directed. Usually, that's not always 100%, but what I would suggest you do is call the plan administrator and say, hey, can I self-direct some of this? And they may allow you to even do what you contribute to it, but a lot of employers or plans don't allow you to do that. But yes, so if you have an old 401k, if you switch jobs, you don't have to move it to your new employer 401k. You could take that and make it into a self-directed IRA. And that will actually be a traditional IRA. And we'll talk a little bit about that in here a couple minutes.
Okay, and question number 2, you can only be an LP, that limited partner, with SDIRA and cannot be a limited partner and a general partner with SDIRA? Question mark. That's true as far as I know. You can't.
Yes, I believe so. Yes, because the general partner, you would be, yes.
As your
Yep.
part owner, you can't benefit from your,
Correct.
unfortunately.
Yeah, Kevin, hi, this is Rakesh. So can I ask another question, like as a follow-up question for this?
Sure.
Yeah, so I work for a bank and there are some compliance regulation over there. So the question which they are asking is for the self-directed IRA, whether I'm an active participant or the passive participant, even if I'm a LP.
I'm not 100% following the question.
Yeah, so the question what my compliance department asking is like, even if I'm a LP, since you are making a decision which property you are investing in, so that is not a passive investment. So I don't know like how do we, since we are LPs, only passive investors, right? So they say you cannot be active participant if you're using the self-directed IRA, because they've got a list of the brokers which you can do the business with. So, and then I don't see Adventa or Equity Management or other SDIRA players over there in the list.
Okay. Yeah, so if your IRA is in with a brokerage, chances are, yes, you will not be able to invest in as an LP. You would have to move that out of the brokerage into a custodian, a self-directed IRA custodian. And I'm going to give you some resources here at the end, a couple custodians that I work with and know about that you could check into and see if, you know, one of them would work for you. Yeah.
Okay, sound good. Thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay.
Looks like we had one more Kevin here
Okay.
from Bessie. Hey, Bessie. She's asking for SDIRAs. Are UBIT and UDFI usually offset by depreciation from your experience?
Correct. Yeah. I don't have a whole lot of experience with UBIT because I try to stay away from it. And we'll talk a little bit about UBIT under the solo 401k because that can eliminate UBIT. But yes, a lot of times from what I'm being told is you can take the depreciation and so forth and knock that UBIT down some, so your UBIT bill may not be quite as high. So yeah, that does help for sure.
Okay, I think that's all of the questions for now.
Excellent. Okay. So here's the strategy that I use. When I was trying to build my portfolio up, I would always use cash, or what I would refer to as non-IRA or non-entity money, and use that because I wanted to get the depreciation and deductions. So what you can do is build that up, and then when your self-directed IRAs are larger and you're older, maybe you're even over 59 and a half, and you can start to pull from your IRAs, then you can start investing in them and use that for your cash flow and your EAT money. Just one strategy that I like, because that way you do get advantage of the depreciation. So one thing I'll mention, if you do buy, let's just give you an example, a rental property or a commercial building or a gas station or a Dollar General with your Roth IRA, your Roth is not going to get any depreciation and deductions for that. That's basically you'd be double dipping, because your Roth is going to grow tax-free. So you can't double dip, basically. There is a way to structure some deals. It's a little bit more advanced, but you can use what's called sophisticated LLC. And with that, you can do some deals like with 3 or 4 financial friends, and you can come in and let's just say use that same rental property example. Maybe one partner comes in with an IRA, the other 2 partners come in with non-IRA money, they use cash. You can create that so the IRA partner gives up their depreciation, they give it to the other 2 partners so they can use that deduction and depreciation. So there is ways to do it that's much more advanced, and you'd want to work with an attorney that's familiar with that. But there's definitely attorneys out there that have done these types of things. Okay, let's get into the different entities, and these are my picks, what I like the best. So I'm gonna start out with the traditional IRA. That's the one I like the least. So I'm gonna start there and go to the best. That makes sense. So that's a basic. It's been around forever. It's the pre-taxed. So you get a deduction, putting your contribution in every year, small deduction, but it's pre-tax. I like to look at it as, would you rather have the tax on the seed or the crop? And that's basically what you're doing with a traditional. And there's a time and a place for traditional. I just personally don't like it because I don't want to pay taxes on it down the road. So the next one is a 401k. This can be an employer plan. This could be your own 401k through your own business. Same thing. It's pre-tax. Not a big fan. The biggest thing for me is what's going to be the future tax rate. If you think the taxes are going to be lower in 15 years than they are now, then go for traditional. If you think you're going to be in a lower tax bracket in 15 years when you retire than you are now, then a traditional is probably the better way to go. But for me, as a full-time investor, I'm never going to be in a lower tax bracket. Every day, my personal wealth increases just because my mortgages are being paid down. My properties are, appreciating. I have more cash coming in from different investments. So I'm never going to be in a lower tax bracket. So for me, everything is a post-tax. So that'd be like the Roth. The next one, I start to like this a little bit. This is an ESA, which is a educational savings account, or better known as a Coverdell. The gentleman that started this years ago, his last name was Coverdell. So it's post-tax, but it grows tax-free. And probably the biggest downfall is very low contribution limits. I think it's like $2,000 a year. And it's a use it or lose it format too. But that's very minimal because you actually have up to the age of 30 to use it, or you can even pass it down to another family member. But this is used for educational purposes. That's an educational savings account. And the nice thing is, if you would start one of these when your kids or grandkids are, little, 5 years old, and it starts to grow, you can actually use this for school expenses, K through 12. This does not have to be college. So, backpacks, books, tuition, maybe private school tuition. So there's a lot of good advantages to it. All right, the next one. Now I'm starting to get a little excited here with the health savings account. This is for health expenses only, but it's a very wide open. You can use it for, contact solution, chiropractic. I get a massage every month. I use it for that. Now, with the health savings account, you do get a deduction for the contribution, like the traditional, and it grows tax-free like the Roth. So you get the benefits of both of them, if that makes sense. You get the deduction for putting it in, and the maximum for 24 for a family, I think it's like $8,400. So I get an $8,400 deduction, and then every year from there on, it grows tax-free. But here's what I really like about it. You can do a distribution from that health savings account years later, meaning in 2024, I saved my receipts for prescription drugs, anything out of pocket. I save those receipts in a file. In 10, 15, 20 years, whenever I want to, I can do a distribution out of that HSA, and that's all tax free. So you have to save those receipts. But when they were writing this tax code, I'm not sure what year this was introduced, that was what they put in. And this is the only IRA that allows that, where you can defer your distribution for expenses that were paid that year, that calendar year. So that's a really nice feature. Another nice feature is you have a one-time rollover from a traditional IRA. If you have an HSA, I would definitely do a one-time rollover, because now you're moving, potentially $8,400 from a pre-tax entity to a post-tax entity. So you don't have to pay taxes ever on that $8,400, and it can grow tax-free, which is great. So I did forget to mention how to be eligible for HSA, health savings account. You have to have a high deductible health plan. My wife's a nurse at a hospital. She's been at the same hospital for 28 years. She has a pretty decent health plan. We actually changed our health plan just so it would be high deductible, so I could get the HSA. So I did the math, and I know that my benefit of having that entity is going to outweigh the additional cost in the deductible, if that makes sense. Okay, the next one is a Roth. I like the Roth. I'm a big proponent of it because it's post-tax. You already paid the taxes on it. You put in your Roth. Now, everything from there on grows tax-free. So if you were lucky enough to have a Roth with, let's say, 100,000, and you put it into a syndication, 3.5 years later, it comes back and you get 160,000 back. That 60,000 is completely tax-free. Another part I really like about it is there's no RMDs, which are required minimum distributions. So this is a big legacy play for a wealth generator for your future family. You can pass these down to grandkids, your kids, whatever. And you never have to pull money out of that Roth if you don't need it. So it's not like you're going to lose it. You can pass it down to a family member. So that'd be a great thing to be able to pass on to, a grandkid and say, hey, here, your college is paid for, or your first house is paid for through your grandfather or something like that. That'd be a really cool thing to do. So that's just one component of the Roth that I really like. So my number one entity is the solo 401k Roth. And I've had mine for a couple of years now, and I only typically use the Roth component of the solo 401k. Sometimes it's referred to as a self-employed 401k, a single 401k, or one participant 401k, but it's a different entity than a IRA. And the reason it's different is it's in section 401 of the IRS code, not 408 where the IRAs are at, if that makes sense. So it's a totally different type of investment vehicle, retirement vehicle than an IRA. So with that, it has different rules. And we'll get into them here in a second. So for eligibility, you can be self-employed, you can have a side hustle, you could be a real estate agent, or you could even have 1099 income. So really, one thing to think about is if you have a W-2 job and you have a 401k with your W-2 job, you can still be eligible for a solo 401k. Let me say that again. You can still be eligible to open up a solo 401k, even if you have one through your full-time employer. Now, to do that, you have to have a side hustle or some type of 1099 income. I personally do not contribute a whole lot to my 401k Roth. I want the vehicle, not the contribution amounts, if that makes sense. So the reason I want the vehicle is, you can see there, number 3, I'm my own trustee. So you have no custodian. That is absolutely awesome. So this solo 401k costs me $99 a year to operate. My IRAs, when I do deals with them, I spend probably $3,000-4,000 a year doing deals in one of my IRAs. I'm saying $3,000 or $4,000 per IRA because I have all the custodian fees. So that's why I really like the solo 401k. It's not gray, it's black and white, because it's written right in the tax code that the plan participant can act as their own trustee. So basically, you have total checkbook control of a solo 401k. Unlike the IRA, you can have checkbook control, but it's a little gray. Some custodians don't even offer that because they don't like it. They don't think it's IRS compliant. I personally don't do a checkbook control IRA. I just think there's too gray, and there's chances for them to get audited and so forth. So that's why I put all my focus into the solo Roth. So someone mentioned earlier about UBIT. Another nice thing about solo is there is no UBIT with leveraged real estate, and that's pretty clear right in the section 401 of the IRS code. And then you can contribute 10 times more than an IRA. So the one question earlier was about your income restriction for the Roth IRA. With a solo, there's no income restriction at all. You can make $1 million and still contribute to your 401k Roth, which is great. You can borrow money from it anytime if you need be. I think it's up to 50,000 at a time you can borrow, and you can actually pass on the solo 401k Roth to future generations as well. Like the regular Roth, you can do that. You can pass it down, and it's tax free for them as well. So here's some more info on the solo that I like. If you would do a prohibited transaction and get caught with the solo 401k, the penalties are much, much lighter. For a solo, it's actually 15% of the transaction versus an IRA is 60% of the whole IRA. And then they make you do a distribution for the additional 40%, which you have to pay taxes on anyway. So basically, your whole IRA gets blown up if you do a prohibited transaction. That's another reason why I really like the solo 401k. And here's a little bit more on the UBIT exception. There's no UBIT if the sole cause of UBIT is to acquire or improve real estate. And that's the exact wording out of the IRS code. So you can buy a rental property, if that rental property or investment would have UBIT, but if you're purchasing it, you're exempt from the UBIT. So the third thing here is what I would suggest doing, and a lot of people do make this mistake, so I try to catch them before they do, is one way to fund a solo 401k is a lot of people say, well, I have a part-time gig, but I only make $20,000 a year. Well, yeah, you're not going to be able to contribute too much to it. But one way you can fund that solo 401k is by doing rollovers from traditional IRAs into your solo. So you can do a traditional rollover, traditional IRA, but you cannot do a rollover from a Roth into the solo 401k Roth. Okay, you can only do a traditional, that would be pre-tax. So a lot of people, I found that they'll make the mistake, they'll do a Roth conversion from traditional to Roth and then say, well, I'll put that in my 401, my solo 401k, but you can't do that. So you got to make sure if you're doing conversions or rollovers, you want to make sure you do it correctly, because once it's done, you can't go back and redo it either, fortunately. So there is some downfall to this, but you got to really make sure you do your research and know which way to move things. So here's some changes for the solo 401k for 24. They did change the required minimum distribution. The Roth portions are no longer required to do an RMD, which is great. And I talked about this a little bit ago, be a great legacy plan. So that's new for 24. Before that, you had to take a distribution if you're over a certain age. So if you're under 50, you can contribute to $69,000 a year to a solo. And then if you're over 50, you can add an additional 7,500. So it's quite a bit, a little over 7,000 if you're 50 years old, which is great. And I talked about this before. There's no income restrictions on the Roth 401k like there is with the regular Roth IRA. So you can make $1 million a year through your business and you can still contribute to your Roth 401k, and it acts as your as a regular IRA. So once you have this solo 401k set up and you have money funded into it, you can do the same thing you can with an IRA. You can put it into a syndication, you can do private placements, you can do private lending, you can, what have you. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with it from there. Okay, so here's some resources. These are different custodians that I personally work with. Camaplan is out of Pennsylvania. I've been with them for a couple of years, and I have a couple IRAs with them. Quest Trust Company is out of Texas. I do use them for a few IRAs as well. Advanta IRA is out of Atlanta, Georgia. I personally never used them, but I have some friends that do, and they have a good reputation. So you could look into them. They have great training programs. You can get on their email list and they'll send you out notifications for all their different trainings. Now, I am partial to the solo 401k, which is the Neighbors Group. That's who I use. I'm actually an investor in their company. They are developing a new app program, and I invested some money in a little bit less than 2 years ago. So I really like them. They, like I said, I think it's like $99 a year, unless it went up, but I only pay $99 a year for my plan. And basically that money is for the documents that they give you to run your employer plan. And then you have your money sits in a bank account that you have access to because you're the trustee of that account. Any questions, Hillary or Ian?
Oh yeah, we got questions.
Okay.
Are you ready for them now?
Maybe take a couple, and then because I only have like 1 or 2 slides left in case someone wants to jump off. Or do you want me to just finish and then we'll do all the questions?
Yeah, why don't you do that? Let's finish.
Okay. Yeah, I only have a couple more slides, couple more minutes, and then if someone needs to jump off, they can do that. So this is another great resource. It's a book written by Quincy Long. I personally know Quincy. He is the founder of Quest Trust Company down in Texas. I mentioned previous slide. He wrote this book, not even, I think it's less than 2 years ago. Really, I think maybe $20 on Amazon. It's awesome. Goes much more detail. It's an easy read. I would highly encourage you to pick that up and read it. if this is of interest to you. So what's some next steps? Obviously, you could contact me if you have some idle funds sitting around and you're intrigued with private money lending. I can help you out with that and show you what I do and so forth. Hillary and I talked about when we were sort of brainstorming on what to talk about, here tonight, we said maybe we'll do a follow-up to this and get a little bit deeper, maybe into some of the different strategies. So I just want to throw a few of these out. And if someone wants to, send her or Ian some emails or something, say, hey, I'd love to hear more about this. Maybe we could plan to do one of these in the spring or whenever. But the one is inherited Roth, and I mentioned earlier, it's a game changer. Basically, the downfall with everything I talked about tonight is you have to be 59 and a half years old to do a distribution. And that's a downfall. Well, with an inherited Roth, my one daughter has one. She's only 18 now. She got it when she was 16. She can do a distribution anytime she wants. So it's awesome. So say, for instance, say that inherited Roth was in a syndication. You put it in there for 2 years and it sold, and you got that money back on a Thursday, it went back in your Roth. You could do a distribution on Monday and pull that right back out tax free. So there's a lot of good things to do with that. And then I've done some presentations for different real estate investors and groups on how to grow small dollar IRAs, because that's always a big struggle. Someone may say, hey, how do I build my daughter's, Coverdell account if I can only put $2,000 a year in it? And I've done that with both of my daughters using wrap loans. Those yields are, I think the last wrap loan I did a couple months ago, the yield was 187%. It's a great strategy to do it. It's basically two different notes and mortgages, and it's a great way to build up those small ones real quick, so you can turn them into bigger investments. And then I'm considering having a conference on this topic here in central Pennsylvania, maybe in the spring or summer, something like that. So if that's something of interest to you, shout out to me, just so I can add you to my email list if that happens. I just have to figure out how I can, how much we'd have to charge to bring in some speakers that I'd want to be there and so forth. So that's a possibility. But here's my contact information again. I am on Facebook, and then I'm going to start using LinkedIn a little bit more. I'll probably start navigating away from Facebook and more into LinkedIn here in the next 6-9 months, but I'm on both. You can feel free to connect and shoot me a message there. That's all I got, folks.
That's
So
it.
let's hit some questions.
That's it. My brain's about to explode. That was a lot. That was good stuff right there. Yeah, I feel like there could be so many little
Offshoots.
Yes, and there will be in just a second here. Ian, do you want to just go back and forth?
Sure, that works for me.
Okay. Do you see the first one? I'm scrolling.
Yep, I do. I think we started off with Mike Olson. What's up, Mike? Mike's question is, what is the process of switching from a broker account to a SDIRA?
Okay, excellent question. Was it Mike? Is that who asked that?
Yes, sir.
Mike. It's actually pretty simple. From memory, if it's in some funds or whatever in stocks, you just have to move that to cash and then set up a account with a custodian, and then tell them, say, hey, I want to move $50,000 from Fidelity to you at the custodian. They will initiate that paperwork for you. And a lot of times they'll do everything. So they'll submit it to Fidelity or Schwab, whoever it is. And it's a little time consuming because everyone's going by their own rules and, so forth. So don't expect to have it in 2 days. I'd give yourself maybe 3-4 weeks to make it happen. But yeah, the first step is to get a custodian in mind. So that way you can move it.
Awesome. Next question from Dacia. Can we use Roth to contribute to infinite banking?
No. Yep. You have to use non-IRA money.
All right.
Question.
Beautiful.
Good question.
Next-
That'd be awesome if you could.
Nice. Next question is from Rasul. Rasul asked, did you say you can do a one-time rollover of your traditional 401k into your HSA?
Sort of. So if you have a traditional IRA, yes. So you can't move it directly from the 401k to the HSA. You would have to open up a traditional IRA and then move it to the HSA. And when I say a one-time rollover, it's the amount is just for what the annual contribution amount is. So if you have 50,000 in that traditional IRA, you can't move all 50,000 into the HSA. You can only move like 8,400. So I'm going to use numbers for 24, and that's a family HSA. So that's max, but that's a great way to inject some cash into that right away.
Great. What is the maximum annual Roth contribution?
It just went up a little bit.
7,000?
Something. It's like seven or 7,500. I forget the exact number. And if you're over 50, it's an additional 1,000.
I was gonna say you can Google it pretty easily too.
Yeah, Google that to get the number because I know it just changed here in January.
Go ahead.
Okay, nice. Dacia asked, can you roll your SDIRA into solo 401k?
Yes. Just the traditional. You can't roll the Roth. So if you have a traditional, and this is what I did. I had a bunch of traditional IRAs at a custodian, and they were from contributions that I made, like SEP IRAs and so forth over the years. I combined them all into one account. And then that account I moved into my solo 401k. And the solo 401k also has a traditional bucket, if that makes sense. It's a bucket, and then you have a Roth bucket. So they have to stay in the same component.
All right. If I have a GC firm, pardon me, this is from Derek, by the way. If I have a GC firm, currently my majority of my personal income, and receive a cash out from a refi as a lead GP in my holding company, can I commingle if I'm a real estate professional?
Cool. That one might be out of my pay grade. I'd have to sort of map that out. So now is Derek talking about using an IRA to do this or just regular
Sorry to
earnings?
generate it. Since I have a general contracting firm that I actually do not have an active 401 or Roth at the moment.
Okay.
So could that be the catalyst of opening one? If we have a significant cash distribution.
You have any employees in that contracting business?
2.
Is the employee your spouse or?
No, sir. 2 payroll.
Okay. So yeah, if you have an employee, then you can't do a solo 401k. You would have to do a regular 401k, like a safe harbor 401k. but the solo is perfect for like self-employed, gig workers, real estate agents, real estate investors, one-man shows, basically.
If there are two LLCs, could I just open one on the holding company then with two different EIN? Oh,
You
okay.
could
I'll keep it simple then.
just use a different LLC and tie that with your solo 401k where you're just the only active employee in it. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Sure.
I'll go. Neighbors is the best, says Vesey.
Yeah, I like neighbors.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of thank yous and stuff. I think that's it for the questions. Does anyone want to speak up with a question and ask it live? Russell, do you have
Hey,
one?
Hillary. I do. It's funny because I was actually on the phone with a custodian today to roll over my my TSP. I don't know if the rules are different for a TSP. I just assume it's treated like a 401k. But I have like the majority of my contributions are traditional and a little bit of them are Roth. So I think when I roll it over, I have to do 2 rollovers. But when I
Correct.
is it possible to roll over my traditional one and have, I guess, are the taxes automatically taken out on the rollover if I do it into a Roth, and my K1s, my losses, and all that other stuff, my depreciation would mean I get the taxes back that I paid when I file?
All right. That's a complex one.
Yeah.
So, talk to your accountant about that because there's a lot of tax questions in there I'm not too familiar with, but you did say something there in a second that I did want to highlight. Oh, I know what it was. So say you have a traditional IRA that has $100,000 in it. And you're like, you know what? I really want to dabble into a self-directed IRA, but I don't want to do all 100,000. You don't have to. You can move 25, 30, whatever. And a lot of my private money lending partners, that's what they did. They wanted to get in on a deal, but they just wanted to tiptoe in first and didn't want to jump all in. So I said, hey, just move over 25,000, see what it's like, and then you can decide from there if you want to do more. So that's one nice thing is you don't have to do all of the IRA. You can do partial.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to move all of it. So, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Do it.
Sure.
All right. Other than that, I'm just seeing a bunch of people writing, thank you. Excellent presentation, incredibly informative. I appreciate all the information, Kevin, and appreciate the invite. Great info. Thank you. Thanks. This is great information, very informative. So everyone's agreeing on
Awesome.
that point. Does anyone else have something they want to ask Kevin while we have him here? No, but Kevin, you said it's okay for them to reach out to you if they think of something.
Yeah, emails the best, and if they have any specific questions, sure. Yeah.
And I'm going to follow up too with something you said, which was that if someone who either knows me or knows Ian, if you have an idea for something you'd like to hear about that you would love for Kevin to go into the weeds with, please email us or even put it in the chat right now. We'll see it. Because we'd like to have him back again in a couple months and we can do that. We can go deeper on one of these topics. But yeah, that was amazing, Kevin. Thank you so much for
Appreciate it.
all the detail. And yeah, it's a lot to think about too. And everyone's situation is so different that be expecting some emails, I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely. I feel like we just scratched the surface barely.
Yep.
And we did have one last minute question sneak in too. Joseph was asking if a 529 can be rolled out.
So yes, and I don't know the specifics about this, but I do want to research it because it's going to apply to me personally, because both my daughters one's in college and one's leaving for college in August. So if you have 529 funds that you do not use or deplete the fund, you can do a rollover into a Roth IRA. That rule just came out in either 22 or 23, and I think it's effective now. So yeah, that's a great way to do it. I'm hoping that my girls have some money left over in their 529s, and we can jam that into their Roth, and that'll give them some money to get started with. But yeah, definitely ask. I don't know the specifics. There's some rules with it, but ask your maybe accountant or do a little research online. But yeah, you can definitely do that.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Kevin, everyone.
You bet. Thanks, Hillary. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah,
We
appreciate it,
appreciate your
Kevin. Thanks,
expertise,
Hillary.
your
Thanks for coming,
experience.
everybody.
Absolutely.
bet.
We'll send out the recording later. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right.